Morning. Oh, we can
Good
hear.
morning.
Baruch Hashem.
Morning.
Good morning, Yosef. Back in Yerushalayim. Every morning in Yerushalayim.
Yes,
Wonderful.
no better place to be.
All right, we're on Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, and we're going to look at the Gemara we looked at briefly yesterday. The halacha is Rav. I don't know why. Is anybody seeing on their screen something that says internet, email, AI law?
No.
No. It keeps on popping up on my screen. I don't know how to get rid of it. Okay. So yesterday we paskin that the halacha is that the oils and the wicks that can't be used on Shabbos can be used on Chanuka, Chanuka Shabbos, Chanuka weekday. Chanuka weekday they can't be used because kafsa ain't zakukla. If it flickers and it goes out, you're still yotze the mitzvah. You don't have to relight it. Therefore, if these oils and wicks result in the light going out during the weekday Hanukkah, it's not a problem. Leil Shabbos, you can use these flickering oils and wicks because the halacha is asur lehishtamesh la'oira. You're not allowed to use the light of Hanukkah for your own benefit. Therefore, if you can't use it, you won't come to try to adjust it on Shabbos. Okay. What's the point of the halacha right now? The first point in halacha is kafsa ein zakukla. If it burns out before the 30 minutes are over, you don't have to relight it. So the Gemara said, var minhi. I have a question on this halacha. About 12 lines on the top of the Amud, the last word of the Amud, var minhu. Var minhu, I have a contradiction. Mitzvasa mishatishka hachama ad shetichla regel marashok. The mitzvah of hadlakas ner Chanukah is from Shkia, or Tzeis HaKochavim. We'll get into that when we get into the halacha. But this is the time frame. Mishatishka chama ad shetichla regel marashok, until there are no longer any people walking around in the shuk. We'll get to this also. My love, so the Gemara says the ikavsa hadar madlikla. What does this mean? The mitzvah, if you just read it superficially, the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is that it should remain lit from Shkia until no one's walking in the shuk. What does that sound like? And if it should happen to burn out during that period of time, you have to relight it. So it sounds like it's a contradiction. We said the halach is kafsa ein zakukla, and it looks like kafsa zakukla. The Gemara says, loy. That's not what it means. It means the eloy adlik madlik. It means this is the time during which you have to light, not the time during which it has to remain lit. Oh, two different ideas. What is the period of time during which I can light Ner Chanukah is different than the period of time in which it must remain lit. It doesn't have to remain lit the whole 30 minutes. What you have to do is light it during those 30 minutes. That's what it means. That's when you light.
But you can also say that. But you can also say that it has to have the potential to light.
That's the Gemara's next answer. The inami, or what this means is lishiura.
Yeah.
How much oil or wick do I need to put in there? It's enough oil and wick that can last from Shkia until people are not walking in the shuk. But if it burns, if I put enough oil into there with enough wick to last that amount of time and it burns out, I'm yaitz the mitzvah. So either one of these answers does away with the problem. The halacha is if it burns out during the half an hour, you don't have to go back and relight it. And this doesn't contradict it. When it says the mitzvah is from the time of Shkia till the time no one's in the shuk, that means that during that time you have to light it. Not that it has to remain lit. that's the time you light it. Or it means that's how much time worth of oil and wick you need to put into it. But under either of those answers, if it burns out during the time, you don't have to relight it. So Rashi says, Lishiura, the second line of the narrow lines of Rashi. What does the second answer mean? Shehei b'shemen kashir hazeh. You must put enough oil into the menorah so that it can remain lit from the time
that you can start until the time that people stop walking.
That's right. You have to put enough into there. You have to put enough into there so that it can remain for that period of time. So Rashi says, and if it went out during that time, you don't have to relight it. Okay. Let's focus for now for halacha. The Gemara said the first answer is the idea of shkia till tichla regel menashuk means that this is the time to light it. You don't light it before shkia, and you don't light after no one's walking in the shuk. Okay. What happens if you didn't light ner Chanuka? And it's after that half an hour. Let's say we're going to use shkia, mishatishka means shkia. And we're going to say tichla regel mashuk is 30 minutes later. The time zone, the first night Chanuka, the 30 minutes is, let's say, from 5 o'clock to 5:30. It's 5:35. You haven't lit Neris Chanuka. According to this teretz, you're done. You don't like Neris Chanuka. What happens if a person didn't put on tefillin and it's now shkia? What do? You got a problem. What happens if it's Seis HaKochavim? You didn't put on tefillin the whole day, and now it's Seis Kochavim. You can't put on tefillin at night. The mitzvah's over. So, according to this teretz, the literal reading is Iloi Adlik Madlik. It's during these 30 minutes that if you haven't yet lit, you can light. But once those 30 minutes pass, it sounds like finished. You don't light. Let's take a look at Tosfos. Tosfos says the Iloi Adlik Madlik. Avol mikan ve'elech. However, after the half an hour is over hazman, the time is up. It's like tefillin at night, finished. You can't put it on. And you can't light the Chanuka candles. You can do whatever you want, but it's not a mitzvah. Omer Hari, so the Omer Pyrus, the Pyrus says, I'm reading from Tosfos, the Yesh li zoher ulahadlik balayla miyad. A person has to be very careful to light immediately when it turns night. Don't delay lighting Chanuka licht beyond this time period of the 30 minutes. The first opinion of Tosfos says, nevertheless, im ichar. What happens if you didn't light Chanuka candles within that first 30 minutes? What do? Yadlik misafik. You still light the candles because there's some doubt. We'll see what the doubt is in a minute, but you wouldn't make a bracha. This is a rule. When a person is doing a mitzvah misafik, you don't make a bracha. Example, it's the first day Sukkos, and you can't remember if you shook your lulav and esrog, okay? Which is a bad place to be in if you can't remember if you shook your lulav and esrog, but a person can't remember if he shook his lulav and esrog. He has to shake the lulav and esrog again, because on the first day Sukkot, shaking the lulav and esrog is a mitzvah d'oraisa. It's a biblical mitzvah. And when you're in doubt, if you perform the biblical mitzvah, you have to go back and do it. But you would not make the bracha of al natilas lulav. The bracha is of rabbinic requirement. And therefore, since to make the bracha, you have to utter God's name. And it may be uttering God's name in vain if, in fact, you already did the mitzvah earlier. So the first day Sukkot, You don't remember if you shook the lulav an esrog, you have to shake it again, but you don't make a bracha. The first Rosh Hashanah, let's not get into first day, second day Rosh Hashanah, you can't remember if you heard Tekiah Shofar. Also not a good place to be, but you can't remember. So you have to blow Shofar again, but you wouldn't make a bracha. So here we have a case, the Repoiver says in Yosef, the half an hour is up, and you missed the Zman. But now we're going to tell you to light even after the half an hour is up, misafik. There's a question here, but you wouldn't make a bracha. What's the question? The Hamashana Shinui Achrina. The Gemara gives two answers. The Gemara gave two separate answers. We said the halacha is kafsa zakah, kafsa ein zakah cloth. It burns out. You don't have to relight it. We had a question. It says that it has to remain lit from shkia till no one's in the shuk. We had a question. If it has to remain lit, so kafsa zakah glass. The Gemara says no. Stop putting in the word remain. It has to remain lit. It doesn't say that. It says the time is shkia till tichla regel men hashuk. That means if you didn't light during that time, you can't light. That's one teretz. So if you didn't light, you lost the mitzvah. But what's the second teretz? The second teretz says that no. What we mean is you have to put enough oil and wick into it so that it can last a half an hour. That second teretz holds what? Can you still light after the half an hour? Sure.
Still, yeah.
First teretz is the one that said, and if you don't light during this time, you can't light anymore. And that's what it means when it says that you have to light Chanuka candles from Shkia till Tichla Regel Men Ashuk. You know what that means? And if you don't do it by then, you can't do it. Oh, so I can't do it. Comes the second teretz and says, you can do it after that time. This is the time you should light Chanuka candles, but if you didn't, you can light after that time. But what it means from Shkia to Tichla Regel Man Hashuk, that's not a deadline. That's how much oil and wick you need to put into it. So according to the second teretz, if it's after the half an hour, can you still light Chanuka candles? Sure. So now I have two different terutzim in the Gemara. According to the first teretz, once the time expired, you can't do the mitzvah. According to the second teretz, after the time, you still can do it. You just have to have 30 minutes worth of oil. So now the time expired. According to the first teretz, I can't light. According to the second teretz, I can light. So what do? Taisva says, you light it without a bracha. Okay? So that's the first sheet in Taisvus. Now Taisvus is going to open up for me a debate that's been going on for hundreds of years. Ulari Nira, the Re says, the Ata ein lochash masayadlik. Amazing chiddush. You have to be very careful how you read these kind of Taisvus and these kind of chidushim, because as soon as someone says, and now it's different, we get a shudder down our spines. Because for us, halacha is concrete. And if somebody comes along and says, well, something has changed, so therefore the halacha is going to change, we take it very carefully and we don't apply it in other places. When the poskim say it, they can say it. We don't take this logic, otherwise we turn into Reform and conservative Jews, chas v'shalom. The Re says a logic. The Ata now, in other words, in the time of Taisvus, ein lochash masayad. We don't have to worry about when you want to light. You can light any time you want at night, as long as it's before dawn the next morning. Why? The anu ein lanu hakera elevnei habayis. Why do, remember we said the underlying theme of lighting Chanuka candles are two words. Har Sume Nisa. I want to publicize the miracle that God did for the Jewish people. I want everyone to see it. I want the whole world to see that when they tried to extinguish Jewish light, God made sure that the Jewish light would continue. So in the time of, for example, when Jews lit outside, when do you want to light outside? during a period of time where you're going to publicize the miracle. When are you going to publicize the miracle in those days? When everybody's already in their house and locked down for the night? That's when you're going to put your Hanukkah candles outside. Who's going to see that? So therefore, during those days, when you lit outside, you needed to light outside from Shkia till people stopped walking in the shuk. This way, everybody would see the Hanukkah candles. Comes the Ri and says that now that no one's lighting outside because of the sakana, people were getting killed for lighting Hanukkah candles. We'll see this in the Gemara soon. So everybody went and lit Hanukkah candles inside. So who are you publicizing the miracle for when you're doing it inside? Not for the people that are walking in the shuk, for your family. Whenever you can get your wife and kids together and publicize the miracle to them, that's fine. 10 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever you can. Of course, there's a din of zrisa makdim lamitzvahs. The faster, the quicker you can do a mitzvah, you do a mitzvah. But the Ri is now telling us that this shear in the Gemara of like half an hour from Shkia to Tichla Regel Mashuk, not any longer, because now we light inside, and the ikr is to make sure you have your family with you. Okay. What does that mean for today when we've gone back to lighting menorah outside? If we're going to light the menorah outside, that brings us back to the rule that you have to be very careful when you light.
Yeah.
There are those that light 15 minutes, those that are noyeg like the gra. They light about 12 to 15 minutes before it says. Those are the people that daven mincha, go home, light Hanukkah candles, come back to shul and daven ma'ariv. They light about 15 minutes before nightfall. There are those people that daven ma'ariv at seis and then go home and light Hanukkah candles after tzeis. So if you're lighting outside, it would appear that we're back to the old rule that one has to be makbid lighting within the half an hour, whatever half an hour you hold from, 15 minutes before Shkia, and then it has to remain lit for 30 minutes after tzeis, or after tzeis and 30 minutes thereafter. If your minig is that you're still lighting inside, then you have a machlokes hapaiskim. Here's the Ri and Tosfos. If you're lighting inside, you have to be makbid on this half an hour because you're lighting inside. No one outside is going to see it anyway. So that's a machlokes we'll take a more of a look at when we have a chance.
I have a slight question, if I could.
Sure, that's why we're doing it this way.
So, when the entire family, when everyone in the entire family is lighting their own menorah,
Oh, yeah, that's the next sugya.
affect the inyan of Pirsumei Nisa?
Sure, there's a Pirsumei Nisa by me lighting for everyone else lighting for me. Everyone is publicizing the miracle to each other.
Ah, okay. All right, okay.
If I light, then everyone sees I believe in a miracle. They light, I see that they believe in a miracle, and it's a Pirsumei Nisa for each person. Okay, so that's Tosfos. Tosfos says that the first statement of Tosfos is that if you missed the half an hour, you still light Hanukkah candles, but you wouldn't make a bracha because it's a suffix if you're still allowed to light after the time. Because there are two answers in the Gemara. Then Tosfos introduces this new idea that Bisman Hazeh, quote unquote, in the time of Tosfos, where there was a danger to light outside, they lit inside, and once you light outside, there's no Pirsumei Nisa outside. You have to make sure that you have Pirsumei Nisa inside. So what do you have to do? You have to light when your family is together. Okay. Let's take a look at the top Rashi. The very top Rashi. This is part of Rav's halacha. Remember, there are two parts of the halacha. The oils and the wicks that you can't use on Shabbos because they flicker, you can use Chanuka during the week. That's what we've been concentrating on. Chanuka during the week, because if it flickers and goes out, the halacha is kavsa ein zokuk la. If it burns out, you don't have to relight it. What you do have to be careful is that when you light it, it has the potential for 30 minutes. It has enough oil and enough wick to last 30 minutes. Even if it burns out within the 30 minutes, you don't have to relight it. People do, but you don't have to. You yoy to the mitzvah. The second part of Rab's halacha is that those oils and wicks that you can't use on Shabbos because they flicker, you can use on Chanuka, Shabbos Chanuka. But if they flicker, you may come to adjust it. The answer is no one's going to adjust it. Why?
Because you can't.
Haneris halalu kodesh heim ve'ein lanu reshus lehishtamish b'hem ela roisem b'vad. You're not allowed to do anything with the light of the Hanukkah candle. So therefore, no one's going to go over it. So when you have, for example, by Shabbos, the Nev Shabbos, we have b'mem madlikin and b'ein madlikin. Shabbos, you cannot use the flickering wicks and the flickering oil. Why? Because that was the electricity of those days. If you wanted to eat, you ate your Shabbos meal there. But for example, there's halacha that you can't read a book next to your Shabbos candles. Why? Because if you read the book, it starts flickering and you're involved in the book, you may just inadvertently come and shake the candle a bit. And in shaking the candle, either you'll make the fire better havora, or you extinguish it, kibui, and malacha dairaisa. So we don't want to use the flickering oil, the flickering wicks on Shabbos. But what about Shabbos Hanukkah? So Rav says, use the flickering oils, the flickering wick Shabbos Hanukkah, not for the Shabbos menorah, for the Hanukkah menorah, the oils and the wicks. It's Shabbos, it's Leil Shabbos Hanukkah. Oils and wicks that you can't put into the Shabbos leichter, those oils and wicks you can put into the Hanukkah menorah. Why? Because if it flickers, you're not going to adjust it because you know you can't go near it to use it for any personal benefit. Now, question. And I'm just opening the Sugya because this is going to be an involved Sugya. We're just opening it up before we go to the next Sugya because we've not read this Rashi yet. Why is there a halacha that you cannot use the light of Hanukkah for your own benefit? What is it? We say, Haneris halolu kaideshem. These licht are holy. We have no permission to use them for our own benefit. We're only allowed to look at them. Where did this halacha come from? What's the logic that Hanukkah, you light a candle and it becomes holy? It's Kodesh, and you're not allowed to use it. We have all kinds of halachas, for example, without getting complex. The Rishonim talk about it here. Tzitzis. After your tzitzis, you're wearing your tzitzis. What do you do with your tzitzis when you're finished with them? Do you have to put them in geniza? You have to bury them when you're finished? You don't. Now, people are machmir. They do this, they do that. But tzitzis are called tashmishe mitzvah. It's a Sugya in the Gemara and Megillah. Ritzuas of tefillin are different than tzitzis. And certainly a parchment in tefillin is different than tzitzis. What do you do with your lulav and esrig after Sukkot? So a lot of people have the minig. It's a beautiful minig. You put it away and you burn it with the chametz. Some other people take the lulav and the dalet minim and they bring it to a matzah bakery, and the matzah bakery uses it to create a fire on which they're going to bake matzah. All kinds of minhagim. But me'ika hadin, what do you do with your lulav and esrog? While it's a mitzvah during the 7 days of Sukkot, you can't do anything with it. But once Sukkot is over, it's finished. There's no inherent kedusha in these things. Where do we get this thing, this mitzvah, this idea that the wick and the oil somehow became so holy, I can't read a book next to it? So Rashi introduces the first sheet. At the top of the Yomid, Rashi says, a person is prohibited from benefiting from the light of the Chanuka licht. Rashi says, Shehenika Shehu Ner Mitzvah. So that everybody knows that this is a Chanuka candle of a mitzvah. What is Rashi telling us here?
Since
Well, let's go back to the time of Chazal. And I lighted it. What's the purpose of lighting it? And I lit it outside.
Right.
I lit it outside my house. Now everybody's walking back and forth from the time of Shkia till Tichla Regel Mashuk. What's the purpose of me lighting it outside? So everybody know that I believe in the miracle of Hanukkah. Pursuing this, I want to publicize Nes of Hanukkah. So I make the bracha, I light it outside, and then I take my beach chair, I put my beach chair next to the Hanukkah candle, and I take out a novel, and now I'm reading my novel next to the Hanukkah licht outside. People walking back and forth, they say, what a geschmack, the ganz geschmack. The guy's got a little courtyard here, reading on a beach chair, he's got candles lit, beautiful, with a cigar and a tequila, is good shape. Is there any parsume nisa when a person does that? Zero. So Rashi says this is where the idea comes from. If a person would be allowed to use the Ner Hanukkah for his own benefit, I'm going to sift flour next to it. Or we'll see later in the Gemara, I'm going to count money next to it. I'm going to read a book next to it. I completely destroyed the mitzvah. The purpose of the mitzvah is pasuminisa. I want to publicize the miracle. If you're now going to use that light for your own benefit, to sift flour, to read a book, whatever you're going to do, people walk by, they have no idea that you have anything to do with Hanukkah. So Rashi says the Rashi Shita is also l'shtamish la'ira. You may not use the Ner Hanukkah for your benefit, the light. Shehei nicker, it should be recognizable, shehu ner mitzvah, that it's the ner of a mitzvah, not your personal flashlight. And therefore, I don't have to worry if it's Shabbos Hanukkah that you'll come to adjust those wicks and oils that flicker, because you can't use it. Why can't you use it? Because it's Pasuminissa. Everybody has to know it's a miracle. That's the first sheet in the Rishonim, Rashi. The reason why Aneus halalu koydeshem ve'ein lanu reshus l'shtamish b'hem el l'roisam bilvad, because if I use it for my benefit, then I didn't do the mitzvah. The mitzvah is pasumei nisan, I didn't do it. That's Rashi.
So
Yeah.
If he wants to learn, okay, so it's not stam. It's a he's doing a different.
Okay, that's a wonderful question. And right now we're going to see it's a machlokes in Shulchan Aruch, but we're going to learn that when it says Haneres halolu koydeshem ein lanu reshus l'shtamish b'hem, it means you can't learn at the Ner Hanukkah. You can't do anything at the Ner Hanukkah.
There's an Indian of ein ma'arvin mitzvah b'mitzvah. Right?
The Ramban, we have to get deeper into the Sugya. The Ramban calls it a bizui mitzvah.
Yeah.
You're shaming a mitzvah. You did the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah, and now you're using the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah to do a different mitzvah, learning Torah. So you're showing now the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah, pardon me, but there's something more important than you. I'm going to use the light to learn Torah. That pardon me, Ner Hanukkah, I'd like to use your light for a different mitzvah, the Ramban calls a bizui mitzvah. It's very nice you want to learn Torah, but there's a time and a place and how you learn Torah. And you don't use the Ner Hanukkah to learn Torah. And this is a machlokes in Shulchan Aruch, but that's the Ramban sheet and the sheet of many Rishonim, that when it says you may not use the light of the Hanukkah menorah because it's kodesh, it means you can't use it to sift your flour, you can't use it to learn Rashi, you can't use it for anything. Again, if you use it for learning Torah, or you use it to sift flour, it doesn't make a difference. The person that walks by and sees, oh, he's learning Taisvis under this light, that's the end of the Pasumei Nisa. He doesn't know you lit it for Ner Hanukkah. Right. So the Pashup shot is that when we say you're not allowed to use the Ner Hanukkah for your benefit, You can't use it to sift flour. You can't use it to learn Torah. You can't use it. I'll give you another example. Let's say Mamish, Mashiach is here, Mamish, and everybody's so excited. We all go to a cattle ranch. Yosef's going to have to tell us where the nearest cattle ranch is so we can all buy some goats and sheep to start bringing karbonos. Yosef, you need to start figuring out where all the animals are going to come from. I know Dr. DePose has a brother-in-law that has a farm up north where he is cultivating animals that will be kosher for karbonos. He's doing that up north. So Yosef, that's a whole new project besides the wonderful project of the Beis Hamikdash. We need to start having dealers all over the country that are going to have kosher animals for karbonos. So Mashiach is here. Mashiach's here. We all go to Yosef and say, Yosef, we have a text or we have an email, Yosef, 2 goats for a carbon this, 1 sheep for a carbon this. Okay. And we pick up the sheep, we pick up the goat, and we say, this animal will be a carbon ola. This animal will be a carbon toda. This animal will be a carbon shlama. Okay. And now I bring the animals home. I got to get a truck to take them to the Beis Hamikdash. I bring the animals home. And while I'm home, I say, you know what? I'm going to use one of these animals as a shtender. I'm going to tie the animal down, and I'm going to put my Gemara on top of the animal's back. I'm going to sit and learn Hilchas Chanuka on the back of this animal that's Hegdish. You allowed to do that? No, I do that. But I'm learning Torah, and Torah is also holy. You're right, but you can't use Hektish to learn Torah. So these Rishonim hold that once we say the Ner Chanukah is Hektish and you're not allowed to use it, it means you can't use it even to learn. And if you do it, it's a Bizui mitzvah. Pardon me, this is Chanukah and this is Torah. You can't use the light of Chanukah to learn. Okay, let's learn some more Gemara. The Gemara says that the Gemara said the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is from Shkia till there's no more feet in the marketplace. So we had 2 pshatim in that. One pshat is it doesn't mean that it has to remain lit during that time. What it means is, I don't know where this is coming from. Okay. It doesn't mean that it has to remain lit that whole 30 minutes. One shot is that that's the time zone within which to light. The earliest time is Shkia, the latest time is Tichel Regel Mashuk. And the second teretz is you have to put enough oil into it for 30 minutes. Okay. But what does Tichel Regel Mashuk mean? Till there are no more feet in the shuk. So the Gemara says, Tichel Regel Mashuk, Ad Kama. Until when? What is that Tichel Regel Menashuk? Amar Rabba Baba Chana Rabbi Yochanan Ad Dekalia Rigla de Tarmudoi. We're talking about special people here. Rashi explains, we'll read the Rashi in a second, that there was a small nation called Tarmudoyim. And these Tarmudoyim were professional twig sellers. They would go around right before nightfall and they would sell twigs. Now, in those days, everybody wanted twigs at night. Either you needed twigs to light a fire, or you needed some of these branches for your fireplace. You needed to heat your home. If it was a nice summer evening, you still needed firewood to make your soup or cook whatever you're doing. So as it got dark, we needed twigs and wood. These Talmudoyim would, when it was getting close to nightfall, they would be in the marketplaces and in the streets, and they're, so to speak, the last people in the streets. Who are the last people in the streets? The people who are selling the firewood so you can light it in your house to cook or to see. Once they sold out their wood and they're not in the streets anymore, no one's walking in the streets in those days anymore. So what's the time zone to light Neros Hanukkah? from Shkia until these Talmudois are no longer walking the streets, which means no one's in the street. If no one's in the street, there's no longer Parsume Nisa, and therefore the time for lighting Hanukkah candles is over. Can you light after that? We discussed that today in the Taisva. So Rashi says, Rigla the
Longer
Talmudoi.
than
Yeah.
could that have been longer than a half hour, or it was established that more or less after a half hour, even they were not in the street anymore at the time?
It was established that in those days, the time from Shkia, again, Shkia has different interpretations in the Poskim. Shkia means like what we consider Shkia. Or Shkia means there's something called beginning Shkia, there's something called end Shkia, there's something called nightfall Tzizkacham. So there's Machloikis HaPoskim what the word Mishatishkachama is. Mishatishkachama, whatever that word means, we'll call it sunset, until these Talmudois were out of the street. In the time of Chazal, that was 30 minutes. That's what we know. We have a Kabbalah that time frame is 30 minutes, so therefore today it's also 30 minutes. That is the general shita of the Rishonim and the Poskim. The Ritva, however, has an interesting comment. I have it written down here in the back of my Gemara. The Ritva has an interesting comment. He says, "B'chol mokim hador v'azeh kfi mashahu." This is not an established time. In Chazal, what's the whole purpose of the time? We need people in the street to see the Ner Hanukkah. If they don't see it, there's no Parsum Nissa. So in the time of Chazal, they said, when people walk in the street from Shkia until the Talmudois are not there. Says the Ritva, what's the point of the Gemara? People have to be in the street. And in that time, that was when people were in the street. But today, every community has different minhagim. If you go into Yerushalayim and you're on Rehov Shmuel Hanavi, the place is hustling and bustling at 2 o'clock in the morning. The stores are still open. They're still selling cucumbers and tomatoes at 2 in the morning at the fruit and vegetable stores. If you go to Ramat Beit Shemesh, it's like a ghost town at 9:30 at night. So again, the Ritva says that what Chazal are telling you are not concrete 30 minutes. They're giving you an example. In our time, people were walking through the streets from Shkia till the Talmudoyim were no longer in the street. And then the Ritva says, it now depends upon every community, when are people in the streets. The Ritva says, V'aminik haposhet sheshiyuroi kol zaman shechanuyot hamokrim shemen u'chiyotze b'hem suchos. So long as stores that sell oil are open, you can still light Hanukkah candle. Okay, so there's a machlokes, but basically, most Rishonim and Poskim say it's concrete. And the time of Chazal, this was 30 minutes. Until today, it remains 30 minutes, and that's how it's makubal today. You have to have enough oil and wick so that the candle will light for 30 minutes after Netz, after Tzeis V'Chavim. So those people who light at Tzeis need 30 minutes worth of oil. Those people who light like the Gra, 15 minutes before Tzeis, those people at Daven Mincha go home, light candles, then go back for Ma'ariv. They need to put in more oil and wick because they still need to have they were still makbid that it should be lit a half an hour after Tzeis. So now they need 30 minutes after Tzeis plus the 15 minutes before Tzeis. They need 45 minutes. For us, when it's Erev Shabbos Chanukah, boy, you need a lot of oil, and you have to be real careful if you're using candles, because we light Erev Shabbos. When do we light? Half an hour, 40 minutes before Shkia. So now you have 40 minutes before Shkia, plus third till you get to Tzeis, and then you need 30 minutes after Tzeis. So if you light Erev Shabbos 40 minutes before Tzeis, you need enough oil, wick, or wax to last 70 minutes. Now, if it blows out in the middle, you yoitze. But you have to have 70 minutes, or it could be 60 minutes, depends when you light Erev Shabbos Hanukkah. You must have enough oil and wick so that it will burn 30 minutes after Tzeis HaKochav. Okay. We're a little beyond the time, but let's read a couple of lines. Gemara, those who are here will hear this piece of Gemara as well. It's a famous piece of Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara says, mitzvahs ner Chanuka. Mitzvahs Chanuka. What's the mitzvah of Chanuka? How do you properly light candles? Level 1, ner ishu beisai. Every night, the man lights one candle. No one else lights any more candles. On night 2, 1 candle. Night 5, 1 candle. Night 8, 1 candle. You have yourself, your wife, and Knei Nahara 10 Kinderlach, sollen sein gesund. You got 12 people in the house. You light 1 candle the first night, 1 candle the 5th night, 1 candle the 8th night. Ner ish ubeisai. Finished. Yoytze the ikka mitzvah. Bahamahadrid. If a person wants to do something more beautiful, he wants to be a mahader. Ner l'chol echad ve'echad. The second level of a mitzvah is everyone lights a candle. So you have 12 human beings in the house, husband, wife. I'm assuming now that the wife lights, because that's the Pashup Pshat in the Gemara later, and we'll get to whether women light or don't light later. But the Pashup Pshat is husband, wife, 10 Kinderlach sollen sein gesund. You have 12 people in the house. The first night you light 12 candles. The second night you light 12 candles. The 5th night you light 12 candles. And the 8th night you light 12 candles. So level 1 is 1 candle every night for the whole house. Level 2 is 1 candle for each person every single night. And you don't add, like we do, each night another candle. That's level 2. Vahamahadrin, minamahadrin. If you want to be a mahadrin, minamahadrin, beautify on top of beautify, the third high level of the mitzvah. Now we have a machlokas. Beishama yomim yom rishon madlik shmona mikan veilach peches v'hailach. Beishamai says on the first night you light 8, the second night you light 7, the third night you light 6, until on the 8th night of Chanuka you light 1. Why? The Gemara will tell us in a minute what the reason is. Beis Hillel says the opposite. Yom rishon madlik achas. The first night you light 1. Mikan ve'elach moisef v'hailach. And every night you add 1. So Beis Shammai says go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Beis Hillel says go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the Gemara is going to discuss the logic. We'll discuss the logic in a moment. But here we have a tremendous machlekes rishonim, machlekes hapaiskim. And it turns out to be a machlekes in the Rambam himself, who brings down 2 different minhagim. Level 1, 12 people in the house, 1 candle every night. Gamarnu, finish. We're finished with that sheet. Next, we build the next sheeta. 12 people in the house. Night 1, 12 candles. Night 2, 12 candles. Night 8, 12 candles. Beseder. Now I want to be the third level. I want to be mahadrin, mina mahadrin. I want to really beautify the mitzvah. And I'm going to do it like Beis Hillel. Every night I'm going to add 1. The question that the Rishonim deal with, a very interesting question. Is level 3 built on level 2, or is it an independent level? In other words, I want to do the mahadrim and a mahadrim. I'm going to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Does that mean you only light 1 menorah and you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Or do all 12 people light separate menorahs and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Level 1 was only 1 person lights. Level 2, everyone lights. Level 3, you're going to add a candle. Is level 3 adding a candle on top of level 2 that everyone lights? Or is level 3 separate? In level 3, only 1 person lights, but he adds a candle every night. Why? What's the difference? Big difference. Because since the whole reason of the mitzvah is Parsumei Nissa, I want to publicize the miracle. The greatest publicity for the miracle is to do, according to Beis Hillel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So someone looks at my Chanuka menorah, and what do they see? They see what? Last night I lit 1, and then I lit 2. Now I'm lighting 4. Why am I adding candles every night? Because every night there was a new miracle. The rate Parsuminissa. So I'm Yaitza, the 3rd level. But what happens if everyone in the house lights a menorah? Let's say there are 10 people, 12, we said 12 people in the house. And it's the 2nd night of Hanukkah. 12 people light 2 candles each. How many candles are there outside now? 24. 12 people lit 12 separate menorahs. Each menorah has 2 candles the 2nd night. How many candles are lit? 12 times 2, 24. A person walks by, he doesn't know what's going on in your house. Either there are 24 people that live in the house and you're doing the 2nd level of the mitzvah. One person is lighting a candle. Or there could be 12 people in the house and each of them are lighting to the highest level of the mitzvah. So I lack now a Parsume Nisa. If I take level 3 and add it to level 2, people that walk by do not know what Parsume Nisa I'm doing. And why is that important? Because the whole mitzvah is Parsume Nisa. So people walk by. On the 2nd night, they see 24 candles, and they say, "Was tut sich in Lubling's house?" The 24 candles outside. Could be Lubling has, besides his children, grandchildren, he has some guests. There are 24 people in the house, so they lit 24 candles. Or there are 12 people in the house, and it's the 2nd night Chanuka, and Lubling's doing the highest level Parsume Nisa 12 times 224. Therefore, the minik Sfardim, the Rambam brings down both shittas, but the minik in Sfarad became, and this is what the Sfardim do, level 3 is not built on level 2. You cannot do level 3 on level 2. If you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's 1 menorah in the whole house, or 1 menorah outside. And when someone walks by, what do they see? They see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There is no doubt in their mind that what this person is doing is the high level mitzvah. And we'll go into this a bit more deeply when we see Tosfos. We'll see some Rishonim, but this becomes the big machlokes of how many menorahs are you allowed to light. The Sfardim say that if you're going to do the sheet of Beis Hillel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you can only have 1 menorah doing that. If you do 2 or 3 menorahs doing that, nobody knows what's going on in the house. And we paskin like the Ramah. The Ramah says that level 3 is built on level 2. Level 2 said what? That everyone lights. And level 3 says that everyone that lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that became our minik Ashkenazim, that we light multiple menorahs, each one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But what's the reason? Why does Beis Shammai hold 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1? And Beis Hillel holds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the Gemara says as follows. Ama Ula, Pligi Batarti Amaroi B'Marov. Ula said that B'Marov in Eretz Yisrael there are 2 Amaroim that disagree for the logic. Rabbi Yosi Bar Ovin, Rabbi Yosi Bar Zavida. Chado Matayim the Beis Shammai Keneged Yom HaNachnos and Matayim Beis Hillel Keneged Yomim HaYotzin. One says that Beis Hillel says you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because what Beis Hillel is looking at is how many nisim already happened. Beis Hillel says when you light Hanukkah candles, you're being mafarsim the nes. And how are you mafarsim the nes? The way you do it is by doing Yomim HaYotzin. On the first night of Hanukkah, how many miracles happened? 1. There was enough. Well, there's even a question if there was a miracle on the first night, right? The Beis Yosef's Kasha, they had enough light oil for the first night. But on the first night's 1 miracle. When you get to the 2nd night, how many miracles happened? The oil lasted for 2 nights. On the 3rd night, how many miracles?
3
miracles. On the 8th night, how many miracles? 8. So Beis Hillel says each day you're showing what miracle you're up to. So Beis Hillel calls that Keneged Yomim HaYotzin. 1 miracle is over, 2 miracles are over, 3 miracles are over. And Beis Shammai says Keneged Yom HaNachnosim. Beis Shammai says, I want you to start with 8. because we're after the Nes of Chanuka. And when we start Chanuka, how many miracles do we know before we start Chanuka? How many miracles do we know are we commemorating? 8. On the first night, we already know there were 8 nights of miracles. On the second night, we know that there were 7 miracles left. On the 6th night, on the 3rd night, we know there were 6 miracles left. So that's the different logics. Beis Hillel says we're going to make believe that we're in Hanukkah, in the Beis Hamikdash, and a miracle happened tonight. So we're celebrating the first miracle. And then the second night, a second miracle happened. Let's celebrate the second miracle. Beis Shammai says we're already past Hanukkah, and we're living to commemorate Hanukkah. We know on the first day how many miracles are going to happen. 8. The second night, 7. So Beis Hillel says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beis Shammai says 8, 7, 6, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1. That's the first logic that's given for the Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Another interpretation of Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, time of the Beis Shammai kneged Pri Achad, but time of the Beis Hillel the Mal Mekadosh ve'ein read. I'll explain this briefly, and then we'll see it more in depth on Thursday. Bli neder. Beis Shammai says, for whatever reason, okay, Beis Shammai says, I'm going to analogize lighting Hanukkah candles to the karbonos that were brought on Sukkot. Like, what does one have to do with the other? We'll leave that for now. How were karbonos brought on Sukkot? They were brought connected the 70 nations of the world, and they started off the first day of Sukkot with 13 bulls, the second day 12 bulls, the third day 11 bulls, the fourth day 10 bulls, the fifth day 9 bulls, the sixth day 8 bulls, and the seventh day 7 bulls. And if you do your mathematics, that equals 70 bulls. So how did they bring these karbonos for Sukkot? 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. So Beis Shammai says, if that's the way you brought karbonos on Sukkot, that's the way you light Hanukkah candles. 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. Again, what does Hanukkah have to do with Sukkot? We'll leave that for now. That's the logic of Beis Shammai. The karbonos of Sukkot went 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, etc. Hanukkah candles go 8, 7, 5, 8, 7, 6, etc. And Beis Hillel says, we have a standard rule for all avodas Hashem. Mailen b'kodesh v'loy ma'ridin. You go up in Kedusha. You never go down in Kedusha. You don't start a mitzvah at 8 and then continue the mitzvah with 7 and then continue the mitzvah with 6 and continue the mitzvah with 5. Whenever you're doing the mitzvah, what do? You're going up. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 2 separate sets of reasons for Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. The first set of reasons is Beis Shammai says, on the first night of Hanukkah, light 8, because I know there's 8 miracles ahead of me. On the second night, light 7, because there are 7 miracles left. And on the 8th night, light 1, because there's 1 miracle left. And Beis Hillel says, no. I'm reliving the miracle, so to speak. On the first night of Hanukkah, it's 1 miracle. I commemorate 1. On the second night of Hanukkah, it's now 2 miracles. I light 2. That's the first set of reasons. The second set of reasons is Beis Shammai says I'm going to analogize the way I light Hanukkah candles to the way I bring the karbonos, the bulls on Sukkot, 13, 12, 11, downwards. And so Hanukkah candles are 8, 7, 6, downwards. And Beis Hillel says you're not allowed to do that because Mailen b'kodesh, there's no such thing as you start doing a mitzvah and you go downwards. You do a mitzvah, you're always going upwards. Mailen b'kodesh v'lo moridin. Okay, example of Mailen b'kodesh v'lo moridin. Not saying the halach. I'm just giving you an example. Somebody has his bottom. He has his bottom from his tefillin, shel yad shel rosh, and something goes wrong with his shel rosh, and he wants to take the bias of his shel yad, and there's a way for the bias person, the bottom person, to fix up his shel yad bias, the black leather, and turn it into shel rosh. He'll put the shins into it, etc. And that seems to be okay because a shel rosh is quote unquote holier than the shel yad. But what happens if a person wants to take his shel rosh and readjust the leather to make it a shel yad. That you're not permitted to do, because it's mailim b'kodesh v'loy merid. You can't take the shel roish and make it into a shel yad. So this is a standard rule in the Torah. We learn it out from the Torah. Mailim b'kodesh v'loy merid. So therefore, Beis Hillel says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Yad Shem will continue on Thursday with all these issues that are now here. Why are Haneros Halalu Kodeshem? Rashi says so that it's recognizable that it's Basumei Nisa. There are other reasons. We have a new issue of how do you light the Hanukkah candles? Is it level 3 on top of level 2, or is level 3 independent of level 2? Big machlokes, the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, the Ramah and the Beis Yosef already in a time earlier in the Rambam.